Yeah, it wasn't going to be long until I hopped on this bandwagon. FNaF theorizing is at an all-time high, and admittedly I've been falling behind. I am currently drowning in a combination of news and decisions from at least 3 different game franchises right now, while also setting up something else as of writing this, so I'm a little occupied. Nevertheless, I have managed to dig through a bunch of theory channels, their recent content, and them actively responding to each other helped greatly. As the title of the video has told you, my premise is to dig through the viewpoints of different theories by the likes of MatPat, Rytoast, ID's Fantasy, and my own to form a combined thought process for what characters could be heading our way, especially with big news coming in April apparently. Before I begin though, I just want to say that at this rate, the Pizzaplex being ruined is soon going to be explainable by the fact that it's basically just an active war zone. There's a good bit here. Let's start with the super obvious one. Our main character, we're going to be playing as this person, they literally have to be here. The real question is, who is she? If you've devoted yourself to MatPat, you may argue she's got something to do with being a robotic copy of Elizabeth or something, though even MatPat himself has kinda ditched this one, so I wouldn't count on it, especially since we have probably a more reliable explanation. In the Tails story, GGY, there's a brief segment where a security guard has to stop a girl named Amelia from beating the crap out of the Fruity Maze game, who is purposefully described with details similar to our protagonist. It was then pointed out that this Amelia girl could be our ruined protagonist due to Chekhov's gun, the policy that if something that seems insignificant is pointed out for no reason, it is actually very important. The prime example being that if a story takes a moment to point out a gun on a table, it will be shot at some point. Anyway, let's move on to Gregory. With the recent status of him being Patient 46, we know that at the very least, by his own choice or not, he's done evil things. Sure, there's the repeated breaking into the Pizzaplex, which is more petty, but I'm talking like probable full-on murder. People have argued that, like Vanny, Gregory was controlled by Glitchtrap. We got MatPat saying he's a robotic copy of the crying child, who I'm gonna call Evan for simplicity's sake, who was told to do these things for someone else, and there's a lot of evidence pointing to wildly different cases with multiple explanations for the same points. However, no matter which theory you follow, you'll often see the same pattern. That being, the evil things he did in the Patient 46 era were influenced and he became independent and heroic by the time Security Breach started. Personally speaking, I have just one issue with this. He is far from a good person in this game. He doesn't hesitate to cause mass destruction throughout the Pizzaplex, especially to the animatronics, for the sole purpose of benefiting himself. And all the while not once considering how Freddy would feel about any of it before doing it, just making up lies afterwards. Yeah, these two are gaming's new iconic father and son duo or whatever, but you can't deny this fact. Given he's apparently homeless and being influenced on pure survival instinct, I wouldn't put murder past him if you want me to be honest. Seriously speaking though, no matter which way you slice it, you can almost certainly throw him on the bullet board. Of course, we can also talk about Freddy. While a lot of people will just throw Freddy into Gregory's camp, which, to be fair, I get, there's still a lot to talk about. Some people have argued for Freddy actually being possessed by Michael due to very specific things he says and does, while others just say he's like a symbolic representation, possibly with some leftover remnant if you're feeling spicy. Personally, I lean more into the second camp of that. I think Michael is just done for good, but that's just me. Can we put Freddy on the bullet board for a ruin appearance? Well, like Gregory, I'd say you almost certainly can. But in what way is the question? Sure, you can just throw Freddy into the same trapped plot as Gregory apparently is in, which I get. However, you remember when Steelwool made that special banner for their Halloween sale? and it featured a visible render of Shattered Freddy, a form we only see in the endings where he gets torn apart. Is it possible they just made that render for that banner or had the model beforehand? Yeah, it is. However, you also should not rule out the possibility that Freddy will appear in this form and may even be an enemy. For what reason, I don't know. The likelihood of this scenario? Let's be real, no one knows. But consider it while you have Freddy written down. Let's talk about Mr. Big Bad next, William. A lot of people are definitely convinced William is going to return yet again in Ruin, and, well, it's for a good reason. I've seen people make theories that he might be controlling the blob, which, I don't know, I'll only believe that one when I see it. I definitely think you can put William on the bullet board for Ruin, though, and while it may possibly be a hot take, I think they're really going to kill him this time. Fans are getting tired of everything being William over and over, and there's barely anything left of the guy. So a combination of these facts leads me to believe they're really gonna put him in the dirt this time. Now Vanny, or Vanessa I guess, are we gonna see her in Ruin? This is the first time where I'm not entirely sure. I'd still say it's very, very likely, given I think they still kind of have to explain just where on earth she went in the burn trap ending that the Ruin DLC likely follows, and fans really want more of her since she was underutilized in the base game. I'd say you can safely put her on the bullet board, just be prepared for any possibility, because it can go just so many different ways. The Blob. Again, a lot of people think this mindless beast will just be under William's control, and again, I'll only believe that one when I see it, which basically means I'm open to the possibility, it's just not my first guess. I think it's highly likely the Blob could just be its own thing. What role it will play, I'm unsure, but a friend of mine and I once both had the idea that it could drop pieces of itself in places to act as enemies. After all, the Blob has tons of animatronics making up its body, and its huge size has to be inconvenient. So, solve two birds with one stone, you know? Just don't count on that idea, because that's all it is. It's an idea, with little basis. Maybe we'll also actually get a canon name for the thing in Ruin, because, yeah, that would help a lot. Anyway, given the two red dots super high off the ground in that one poster we got, I'd say you can almost certainly put the Blob on that bullet board. Now that we've gone through every character I am fairly confident is going to play at least some role in Ruin, because let's face it, it's only reasonable, this means it's time to get into speculative territory. This is where all that talking in the intro about combining a bunch of different theory views is really going to start coming into play, as we're getting to the point where theorizing is kinda needed to justify the character being there. Except maybe this first one. Daycare attendant. Now let me be clear, he's the only standard animatronic I'm gonna cover, cause like, come on, we already know from the poster that Chica is gonna be there, so you know, the other two probably as well. Daycare attendant being a little special is worth talking about though, especially due to a little Easter egg regarding the arcade machine in their room. This Balloon Boy centered arcade game sees him flying through the air while both the sun and moon forms of daycare attendant switch between night and day. However, glitching the game reveals a dreadful combination known by fans as Eclipse. Are you telling me you wouldn't want to see that? Seriously speaking though, I think it's reasonable to assume that even if they don't let Eclipse see the light of day, pun intended, daycare attendant would be a great minor villain for Ruin. The dark is his element, and like Vanny, whatever happened to him is never really explained. Okay, now we're really getting into speculation. Charlotte Emily. Anyone watching this video has probably seen the theory going around of how Charlie is haunting, at the very least, something within the Pizzaplex. A thought sparked by FNaF, I believe, so credit where credit is due. However, MatPat expanded this thought to Charlie haunting the Pizzaplex itself. Not just some animatronic or object, but the whole building. You know, like the usual depiction of a ghost. Evidence for this includes the Nightmarian looking staff bots, Nightmarian plushies hidden in just the most obscure places, the door to the infamous post-it note room, which happens to be full of those staff bots, mind you, having the door be labeled Charlie Door in the files, and the puppet mask on the blob lacking tear tracks, which appeared because of Charlie. As insane as this might sound, I think it's incredibly likely, as some of these things are just not possible to explain otherwise. I'm not sure what role Charlie would play, if anything beyond, I guess, a few messages to find here and there, but I'd say you could put her on the board. However, and while this is probably going to be the hottest take in the video, I don't think she's working alone. Crying Child, or as I said earlier, I'm calling Evan for simplicity. I know there's a big crowd in the camp of happiest day in FNaF 3 is him moving on. The thing is, I just don't believe that. I do believe that was the original intention back in the FNaF 4 days, but times have changed, guys. I can't think of any narratively satisfying way to explain this minigame if that's the case. If this is Evan, why do these kids who probably just don't know him at all, aside from probably Charlie, go through this effort? And if the missing kids are helping him, even out of just the goodness of their heart, why is Cassidy just entirely missing? Don't take my word for it though. Rytos did a video where he explains how he thinks Happiest Day is linked more to FNaF 3's endings than we had originally thought, and is just about the 5 missing children. So go watch that after this. Further diving into this is something from ID's Fantasy, which I had already done a video talking about. The likelihood that the spirits of both Charlie and Evan are within the post-it note room. MatPat timeline or not, both these videos and their evidence firmly convince me that both of these characters are within this room talking to each other. This not only means Evan has not been given peace yet, but judging by the post-it notes he's apparently speaking through, he's actually become very territorial and angry, which, like Charlie, is very fitting for the archetype of a ghost. More importantly, I think his inclusion involves him working with Charlie. After all those staff bots and plushies were of Nightmarian. Not just the puppet, Nightmarian. A nightmare version of Puppet, who appears in just the most obscure situations with no explanation, may I remind you. These two working together would not only explain this very specific choice to use Nightmarian as the breadcrumbs, but would also be narratively sensible. 2 deaths of 1983 from the 2 main families of this franchise. I just think it lines up so well. Of course, my 2.5-year-long history with this character may be argued against me as a bias, but like, come on, I can't be the only one who sees this, right? Moving on, let's talk about the final entry I'm going to cover in this video, the nuclear blast of a debate started by MatPat himself, Mrs. Afton. In MatPat's timeline videos, he proposes the idea that Mrs. Afton is the one who has set the events of everything past Pizzeria Simulator in motion, with the goal of rebuilding her lost family. His evidence for this is very slim, as he's openly admitted it's mostly just a commitment to a gut feeling regarding narratives. The only thing you can really point to as being evidence is the Staffbot Afton family having Mrs. Afton at the head of the table. There's also apparently been a discovery that the music used in one of the security breach trailers was apparently a remix of Bellora's song, an animatronic who often symbolizes Mrs. Afton, so you could, if you want to, mark that one as well. However, I don't think it's worth burning metaphorical cities to the ground over, and for this one I'd honestly just wait for more info to come out, possibly the DLC itself, and just be prepared for anything. Don't go around saying it's impossible or guaranteed, because neither of those extremes are true. Anyway, you see what I mean by the Pizzaplex being a war zone? I just went over like 10 characters organized into around 4 competing parties. There may have been stuff I missed. I know I didn't really talk extensively about Glamrock Bonnie, for example, which some people may think is gonna play some sort of role. Either way, if I miss something, it's because I admittedly wanted this video to be quick and easy to make, hence why the editing was probably also very minimal. If you have any thoughts, feel free to let me know. I'll see you all another time. Bye!